She is a fellow veteran. I'm so proud to call her fellow veteran, serving nearly a decade with the U.S. Navy. Dr. Howell, just for fun here, let's do a radio check. How do you read me over?
I'm Lima Charlie.
Lima Charlie. All right, great. Yeah, it's great to have you. Like I always do with these interviews, I really enjoy the origin story. So, if you don't mind, could you share with our listeners what led you to join the service in the first place? And specifically, I'm curious about the branch you chose and the job. How did that come about?
Yeah, actually, I was in a delayed entry program.
Hmm.
So I made a decision at 17 years old,
Oh, wow.
I know, to sign a contract for a year out to join the Navy. And, you know, I don't know. I think about how did I do that? Because that's a big decision to make for one's life at such a young age to commit, right? And I remember I had gone to take the ASVAB test and I had a decision for which branch. And so I ended up choosing the Navy and I went into electronics. So I still don't know exactly how I ended up taking the ASVAB. But then when I went home, I told my parents, I said, guess what I did? And I needed their approval because I was 17. Right?
Sure.
So I said, I want to sign up for the Navy. They were like, what? Yeah, just like that. And I was like, yeah. And they said for I wanted adventure.
Sure.
Okay. And I think the commercials, you see commercials in the Navy. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, adventure. And I really can't say I knew exactly what I was getting into, but I did. And
Well, at 17, no one does, but that's okay. It worked out. Yeah.
yeah.
So, what was some of your adventures? Where did you wind up going with training and everything? Where did you wind up traveling to?
Well, my training was longer. And then during that time, I ended up getting married. So my husband was in the submarine force.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I had, I was in California, I was in Virginia, I was in Hawaii. And because my husband was in the submarine force and I shortly after had a child 1 year out, right? I was in electronics, but um, having a child early in my career, um, it was challenging then with having a spouse who was in the submarine force.
Oh,
Right?
sure,
And
sure.
then so creating and making decisions around that. And I was in school. So I was going to school outside after I finished my electronic training. I was actually going to school also, one of college classes. And so trying to I was sort of on the ship to shore basis, right? Like you can they can serve as sea duty, shore duty kind of thing, and to try to coordinate with my husband's schedule so that we could live uh, as a couple
Mhm.
um, with a small family. It was challenging, so I ended up really having more of the shore billets, and he took the sea billets, and that was actually part of the reason why I ultimately ended up getting out because I had a couple more children after that, but then I'd have to go out to sea. So that was a big thing.
Yeah, it's difficult. People don't realize the challenge it is to not just serve your country, but to also raise a family at the same time. It's a constant juggle. So, yeah.
Yeah. And to speaking on that point too, is because when you have two people in the military and you have children, what I did not want for my kids, because once I was out too and my husband was still in, is still to have consistency, right? And I think that's a discussion that is important to have about our children who move and have their social lives are disrupted, right?
Right.
From a military life, and how does that impact these kids, right, down the road. So that was one of the things for me that also, in making a decision to stay in or get out, and where could I have some consistency and continuity as much as I could, um, for my children. So, so there was a lot of, and even in my profession, right, that allowed for
Sure.
flexibility.
Oh,
So
sure.
all of those considerations, you know, had to be looked at in this career, military career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a lot of tough calls. So when the time you were in with your billet and I'm sure you had different leadership over time. I'm sure you became part of different teams and that. Was there anything you took out of those experiences? Was there a certain lesson or maybe a leader that taught you something that really kind of, you joined at such a young age. Was there something really impactful there from a lesson perspective?
Well, one of the things is I was in electronics, right? But that was my trade. But fitness was of interest to me. And I used to run the remedial program. And for anyone who didn't pass the fitness test, and
Oh,
also,
sure.
and also, um, I taught classes and I measured people for body fat, right? Uh, and it was interesting because as a youth, before I went in, I was competitive in the way of sports. And even when I was in the Navy, I was on a Navy bowling team. But as a youth, I like to compete. And I think one of the things I I came to understand was what competition meant, right? Competition in a way of not competing against another, but the greatest competitor is ourselves, right? That for us to show up as our best self, what does that look like? Because we can be upset when we don't show up to what we think we can, and if we lose, because when you have a sports, right, there's someone who's going to win, someone, right? And understanding, because I had some challenge when I was there in the service, and we get into our own head, and then we can be distracted and derailed by our thinking and
Right.
our perspective. And so I think, as I think about this, because there's two things. One was attitude, which came later, but who are we competing against at the end of the day and at the end of our life, right? It's our own self-reflection, our own introspection, right? That I didn't have all this kind of contemplative and sense of appreciation then, but that was something that I recognized early in my career with the responsibility of, being as an athlete for the bowling, right? And what that looked like, and the responsibilities and the pressure, right? To represent, and yet I'm representing myself too in how I see myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And plus you learn the teamwork, especially on like, even like you said in the earlier days with bowling. I actually forgot all about bowling being part of that. You can do that for teams. I forgot all about that. So yeah, that's wonderful. So and
Well, we
then
play to win, right? So
yeah, yeah, we played them.
winning feels good.
Yeah,
Winning feels really good.
absolutely, absolutely. So I know you mentioned a few decisions that led to ultimately, leaving the service, but could you walk us through maybe what was that transition period for you? Was there something where you had a little bit of time to plan? Was there um, some type of idea of what you were going to do post service, or did it have to just kind of evolve over time? How did that come about?
But I was in electronics and I actually specialize in calibration. And but it wasn't moving my heart, you know. And the decision to leave the service, not only because of the fact that I would be facing sea time and leaving my children, but I also wanted something that was gonna fill me, fulfill me. And um, and I ended up making a decision to go into physical therapy, right? And physical therapy with the understanding that I wanted to help make a difference. I wanted to make a difference in someone's life. And that move was a very abrupt move that came with a whole lot of change that I had not even thought I would encounter. Okay, from the physical move of commuting 100 miles a day to school
Oh, wow.
to to the um to the understanding too, when I was in the service, you kind of adapt, you adjust. It's a day to day, right? Things are just kind of normal in that way of going to work, getting dressed, putting on a uniform, going to work. But I didn't realize that I had a different vocabulary, a different language, a different view of life until I was on a college campus. And I was looking at the barracks, right? I'm thinking barracks, I'm thinking civilian clothes, I'm thinking chow hall. I'm like, wait a second, I have a whole nother and but I didn't recognize it
Yeah.
until I was out of the service. And then I felt like I just dropped out the sky. And I'm like, wow, I had to reorganize my perspective around now being civilian with this military perspective of everything that I didn't really even see as a thing.
Right. Yeah, you feel like an alien from outer space with the surroundings.
Oh, it was
I,
really interesting.
yeah, I went back to school after the service also, and I felt completely out of place until I ran into another veteran. And then I'm like, okay, now I got a battle buddy. I can talk to somebody.
Which that's not right. Yeah, I know. I thought I was like, wow, I'm like, I didn't even realize it. I was amazed. Like, oh,
Yeah,
no.
that's fantastic. If I could, I'm just gonna pause for a moment. We have to take just the shortest of breaks here. But when we get back, I want to hear more about what happened from school and how that led to all these fantastic things you're doing now. And I really want to get into how listeners can help support you and follow you. So if you both don't mind, just we'll pick it up from your school days. So you went back to school, and then how did that progress into the profession that you ultimately picked, and how did that launch? I mean, that just seems like it was a fascinating jump there.
It was a leap. Um, you know, I for one thing, I didn't know enough about the profession. I just knew I wanted to make a difference, right?
Mhm.
And then the challenge of where I was in New York and the commute, I didn't anticipate the distance, right? And then when I was looking to get into the program, I was told that you should have a second choice because of the likelihood you're not getting in. It was
Oh,
they take a small amount. I was like, what are you kidding? Do you know what I did to like
yeah,
uproot my life?
yeah.
And so I was met at every point with facing adversity. And I'll share something, one of the things that I was challenged with was a class, right? Chemistry, for example. So you're talking about facing your fears and facing adversity and doubts and all those things. Is that in school when I was in high school, chemistry was not a thing that I felt good at. And the instructor that we had at the time ended up having a nervous breakdown, right? So yeah, because
There's a
but
life lesson.
so
Yeah,
I didn't have, yeah, so I didn't have the confidence in getting through a class that I needed to do well at, right? And I went to a school known for its sciences, and I'm like, wow. So I just was not faced with nothing but adversity and challenge all my way there. And I would play the power of positive thinking and listen to music that would uplift me to keep my mind in the right place. And then I had to get a tutor. So when I was having to listen to these counselors, academic counselors tell me, oh, you're not going to get in. Like they were just almost like with this level of certainty.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, you have no idea my determination because you don't know my life. You know, I was in the military, I'm a mother, I have a couple of children, and I'm on a one-way mission here. And I'm going to do what I need to do. And, but I was just like disillusioned by the amount of like um barrier that I felt was ahead of me. And even to the chemistry class, it was like a 400 hall, you know, people sitting in the seat in the,
Hmm.
yeah. And I listened to the chemistry instructor say, you know, if you haven't taken this class before, it's not likely, you know, you're going to pass this class. I'm thinking, oh, great.
Oh,
So I'm going to go have this conversation with this gentleman. So I said, no, 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 that's not me. So I'm going to go down. And I went down, and there was a young fellow ahead of me telling this instructor similar to what I was going to say, but he didn't have military background or same, but basically saying he hadn't taken certain things, and the instructor deterred him from taking a class. I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to talk to this guy because I don't need to hear that. And so I thought, okay, I got to figure this out. And I ended up getting a tutor because I had to take a succession of chemistry classes to fulfill the requirements to apply for physical therapy. And, you know, and each class I got better at, I passed and I got better and I built my confidence, but I had to get a tutor and I had to get over my doubt, and I had to get over the negative like projection from and the things that these advisors were telling me to say, are you kidding? Like, and for all of that, you know, it taught me a lot about perseverance and determination, but your mindset matters. Like, and and I had to kind of just really laser focus my attention and energy to stay with myself. And I guess it still goes back to that competition, right? I'm competing, yes, for they only accept like 24 students
wow.
and they have hundreds of
Out of
applicants.
hundreds, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I gotta sell myself. I gotta get in the door.
Yeah.
Get my foot in the door so I can show up and you know,
Yeah.
and but again, I'm competing against me, my own doubt that's in there, move it out. Like I had to like find ways to resource myself and yikes. So and since then, I mean, I'm very grateful. It was all very challenging even once I got into school, and I did get in. By the way, I got into all but one school that I
Wow.
applied to.
Ah,
But I had a level of confidence and certainty that all the challenges that preceded would be part of what how I'd be able to be successful to get through the program
yeah.
because I was living it. I was showing it, you know, I had to overcome it. And and so even in this profession, I feel so blessed. I'm 30 years as a therapist now, and
Wow.
it is helping people to start over. It is that level of looking someone and helping them see their strength. I'm that mirror for them to see who they are at their core, you know, when they make a decision, right? And it is a decision. And we can acknowledge what we feel. Don't deny it. Acknowledge it. Be with it. And it's like, okay, is this true?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And what I'm hearing from you, especially in the early days of getting through the programs, and it was smart to take on the tutor. What I'm hearing is that the in true military fashion, you adapted, you improvised, and you overcame. I mean, that's like the SOP of getting through any challenge in the military. So you did that, and now you're helping patients, you know, daily do that with their own battles. That's fantastic.
it was something. And so I just, and then, you know, and even during my career though, you know, life happens, right? And so we can be derailed a bit and, and finding my way back is what I had to do because, and this is a kind of a whole nother segment, but it had to do with um depletion. I had wanted so much to help make people better again, their own health and well-being, that there are healthy boundaries in life, right? So when we show up and we think we can make it right for someone else who takes no responsibility for their parts, right? So I was crossing a boundary to like, what am I not doing at this point when someone feels so good when they leave me and then they come back and nothing has changed because it's not sustained.
Right.
It's not sustainable. And all of us in life, whatever we're doing, it's how do we sustain and enjoy, right? And take ownership and responsibility. And these are the things I teach today, and including I have some veteran women that I'm working with, but also working with healthcare professionals. And my desire is to work with folks who are in a place of readiness to meet themselves, to meet their whole self, to meet their true self. And because what's been a way of how they've been working life and living life is not feeling meaningful. It's not feeling like purposeful, right? And so we can be much more intentional and deliberate with how we approach life and let up on ourselves, because we put too much pressure
Yeah.
on ourselves and we criticize ourselves. We're so great at this critical self, aren't we?
Yes.
And so so to be a kinder, gentler self, so to speak. But yeah, and enjoy, because I think that's what I'm coming into understanding, is we can enjoy even in the midst of the hardship. We can come into a place where we can be congruent and really quite purposeful, and for things that are deeply meaningful to us,
Yeah. Well, the people you're helping certainly are benefiting from all of this knowledge and all the hurdles you had to come through. And then on top of that, Dr. Howell, I'm thoroughly impressed that on top of everything else you were doing, you found time to write these things down so that people that can't engage you directly, can't be a patient or a mentee or perhaps, class or audience member, you wrote a couple of fantastic books that people can pick up. So please don't be bashful. Let us know the titles and where our listeners can check out the books and learn some more about this.
Yeah, so these books are on Amazon. I'm actually revising one of them. One is called Self-Care and Healthcare, right? Caring for yourself as you care for others. That I'm revising, but it's still out there. And then it's Heart's Alchemy is the other book. 5 Core Insights to Seeing Yourself as You Really Are. And so that it's really about the heart, right? It's our heart and the intelligence of our heart, the wisdom of this working body, this body of knowledge, right? And it's coming into relationship with ourselves as we're relating to everything in life and everyone in life. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. I always think about A.A. Mine's author of Winnie the Pooh series, said it best. You're braver than you think. You're stronger than you're smarter than you think. I forgot the whole phrase there, but yeah, we're very tough on ourselves. And I think the veteran community as a whole are even more critical of ourselves. Just because we look back at what we accomplished at young ages, 17, 18, 19, you do all these things, you go, well, how did I get through all that? And I'm struggling with this bureaucratic nightmare of a task. And we seem to beat ourselves up over just being frustrated, like every human being is allowed to get frustrated.
Huh. Yeah. And honor, these whole things to realize that, to acknowledge what we feel, because a lot of times we deny what we feel, we pack it away, stuff it away, but it doesn't go away. So this, in this somatic sense of what we feel, coming into this presence to, one of the things I share and teach is to understand that we are registering life throughout life. Life is on a continuum, but our nervous system is how I look at everything now in the way of this system designed for our survival and protection, right? And alerting.
Mm.
And so when we have, you know, PTSD, right? These things, trauma experiences that have a charge to it, and that, or some heaviness to it, right? Especially with loss, and when we see war and all these kind of things that are painful, right? That the system is designed to keep us safe, to protect us. So we're doing the best we can until we learn different. And so we tend to put and pack away, right? What we feel, because there's no time for feeling that stuff.
Right.
But at some point we come to reckon with ourselves. And I guess that where I'm at now, because I've had to reckon with myself, to help people to be present without feeling pressured from themselves or forced into anything that they're not ready for, but what's there and how to access, right? How do we access ourselves in this way that allows for ease and peace in the system, you know, to work with our physiology? And I think it's fascinating when we start coming into this, you know, curious space that creates space in us, that we can breathe with ease and feel a sense of peace and like a deeper understanding and appreciation, you know, yeah, for our life experience as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful, Doctor. I really love your take on all this, and I know you're helping people in person, but I want you also to know you're helping people online. I see the comments. I see a lot of nice. You read the reviews on some of your writings, even people you probably never met. They just picked up a copy of your book, and they wrote you some wonderful comments about how, you know, it's like you're turning light bulbs on in people's minds. Are so I just want to thank you so much for sharing this. I like to ask, if you don't mind, just for fun. I always like to ask, you know, you did almost a decade in the Navy. You've been helping people directly in this capacity for, you know, more than 3 decades now. Did you ever wonder, just think about, my gosh, you know, if I can go back to that 17-year-old version of myself and just had a minute, just like a minute to talk to my younger self, you know, what would you say before knowing everything you've been through now? What would you communicate as that 17-year-old was going home with that letter saying, "Hey, I just took the ASVAB and I'm going to the Navy." What would be your tip, advice, or cautionary tale for her?
You know, it's interesting because I think I had then such a sense of like um curiosity and my spirit of adventure and wanting, because I didn't have enough information, right? Like I didn't really know how truly what I was getting into. And and so I think then I was in a sense with a fearlessness, right? That, and then I had more fear as I got older and I had why, right? So I think my younger self has really, because it's funny you asked me the question, because I've been reflecting on like, wow, to bring that younger, fearless self today is that my younger self teaches me
Oh, I like that.
about
Yeah.
today, because I had to trust. I want, because I think about what did that take for me to make that decision to commit a 1 year out and not change my mind. I wasn't allowed to change my mind,
Right.
right? So I'm like, what did it take for me to make that decision then?
Yeah.
Right. And so this is a recent reflection. So it's interesting you asked me this question, because
Yeah.
I think my younger self really is teaching me today versus the other way, that wow, you know, you know, I was trusting at that point my interests, my, my intrigue, my whatever's to come. I don't know exactly, but whatever it is, I'm gonna do it, and so okay. Yeah.
I love that. You're the first guest I've had in all these years that's flipped it. So yeah, the younger self should be teaching me a few things. I love that. That's fantastic. Oh, well, this is great. I've really enjoyed the time and the talk. And if I could, I know you mentioned Amazon's where people can find the books, but do you have your own website or somewhere where people can follow you online? And I know you have some social media. What do you prefer our listeners do to kind of follow and support you on your current path?
Well, I have my website, Victory in Action. I have a LinkedIn profile, and I'm making some changes, but I'm creating a space. I'm actually looking to create a space which is just an open space for people to come into their heart, right? We're dealing with a lot these days. And I think instead of letting fear lead the way, that we can allow ourselves to be open in our heart and in a way to restore honor and the sacredness of life and human connection, and how we do that, and what that feels like, because the internal experience is what we need to shift so that we can not so much in our head. We think too much. We think way too much. And we're wired for survival. So how do we come out of survival state to understand that we can more efficiently move forward in our heart, open to trusting and intuitive guidance, and like this self-inquiry, right? Is it true? Can we challenge ourselves to our own questioning of what's meaningful and purposeful? So I'm looking to create a space and to allow for that. And I'll be happy to share that with you when I have it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we'd be happy to. And folks, if you're listening now and you want to check out, after this, I'll make sure I get all the links. Anything Dr. Howell wants to share, we'll have it on our website as well. So if you have trouble remembering some of these sites that she mentioned, you can simply go to thelimacharlieshow.com. We'll have a nice biography for her with all her links. So this is fantastic stuff, Dr. Howell. I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for what you're doing, for your patients, for your followers, for your veteran community, and of course, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this time, and I greatly appreciate the invitation to have this conversation.
And folks, in Dr. Howell's honor here, I have queued up this wonderful song, which is actually being performed by the U.S. Navy Band. And I think it encompasses her spirit and the topics covered today. So enjoy this tune, and I'll talk to you after the break. Stand by.